Hello, everyone. My name is Nikos. I will start first. Gilbert, if there's no problem with that.
Yeah, you can start first.
Okay, let me share my screen. Okay, share. So now you see full screen? I hear no one.
Yes, it's appearing.
Okay, perfect. So my name is Nikos Kondras, as Gilbert said. I'm a senior program officer in GWP Med. And in this third presentation, we will discuss about the non-conventional water resources program in the Mediterranean. It's a signature program for GWP Med, and we will see why in the following slides. So, why the Mediterranean? Apart from the most important fact that we are in the Mediterranean, we all know that the region faces a number of issues. And the most important of those is the seasonality related peaks that occur during the summer seasons. The depletion of the quality of the water due to seawater intrusion, destruction of the wetlands, temperature increase, other climate-related impacts, and as far as we know, the reports for the Mediterranean region are not that good. So the future is not bright, as they say. Of course, the population is a major issue. It's the Mediterranean has many overpopulated areas, either countries like Malta itself or cities like Athens and other areas. And of course, one of the most important issues that recently came up is the energy cost for the production of water or the supply of water. Let's not forget that some islands still being supplied with water through ships. Is there a solution to the problems that are being faced in the Mediterranean? The answer is always yes. There's always a solution. One of those, it's the improvement of water management, how water is being governed and managed. The application of water demand strategy, which is a part of integrated water resources management. And of course, the application of non-conventional water resources like rainwater harvesting, treated grey water and wastewater reuse, seawater desalination, which is the most important one, especially on the islands, and of course, the reuse of the agricultural drainage water. This is not something that's applied frequently, but it's one of the options. So the geography and the partners. The program focuses on 4 countries: Greece, which has a great number of islands, Cyprus and Malta, which are islands on their own, and Italy, and most specifically in Sicily. As you can see in these slides, this program has, apart from GWP Med, who implemented the program, and the Coca-Cola Foundation, who was a primary founding institute, you can see that there are a lot of implementing or beneficiary partners. And of course, those are not all the partners that participated in the program. So the program has a lifespan up to date for almost 14 years, started in 2008. It costed almost $7 million, and it included 123 site-specific applications. We will see later on those. They participated 41 water-scarce communities, either islands or coastal. And as we said before, it's implemented in the 4 countries. Methodology around the program is based on 4 pillars. The first one is the demonstration of non-conventional water resources applications, the awareness raising activities, the educational activities, and of course the capacity building training activities. Of course, all of that is applied through a scheme of, let's say, cooperation between GWP Med as the main implementer, local and national authorities, and of course the private sector, who is the funding scheme in this program. The technical interventions. It's perhaps you remember this slide from the presentation made by Alexandros 2 weeks ago. During the program, several technologies have been applied. Either it's rainwater harvesting through underground water reservoirs, or installation of surface tanks, stormwater management, which was the construction of rumble retention walls, an example from Malta, the wastewater treatment and reuse. We had some applications with different technologies. It could be either ultrafiltration or chemical wastewater treatment and reuse. Seawater desalination and water treatment, with the installation of water treatment kiosks in some islands, or the repair of existing desalination units that were not operational. Of course, smart irrigation could not be something that we would not use. It's one of the, if we think that irrigation in the Mediterranean consumes more than 60 or 70 or 80%, depending on the country, of the water, then smart irrigation would be one of the technologies that we would apply. And of course, we had other technologies like water efficiency appliances in hotels and houses, and green infrastructure like green walls or green roofs. Here are some of the examples mentioned before. Okay. And we have the reinstatement of an underground reservoir. Can you see my cursor?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, perfect. We have the reinstatement of an underground reservoir, installation of a green wall. This was in Thessaloniki. The placement of a green roof, which used wastewater treatment, treated wastewater for irrigation. We have a rumble wall for the management of storm water. The installation of a new underground reservoir. This is a modular reservoir. Installation of a water treatment kiosks. Repair of an RO unit, a reverse osmosis unit. And of course, these are the water efficiency appliances that I mentioned before. The education. The educational activities included country-specific educational material, hands-on activities for students, for the students to come close to the technology, see how they work, ask questions on what they see. We had special sessions for students with special needs, material for teachers, for them to continue the work on the educational material. And of course, we had some digital tools like video games and another series of card games and etc. Not card games, cardboard games. We had the capacity building and knowledge exchange, which was primarily incorporated workshops for institutional and other stakeholders, technical trainings in order to promote the non-conventional water resources as a source of income, let's say, in new markets, capacity building for farmers on sustainable water use in agriculture. We have developed a technical guide on non-conventional water resources and technologies. For example, what are those technologies, how can they be used, when it's more convenient to use one technology over another. And of course, we had national and regional workshops and conferences on non-commercial water resources management. One of the most important things on the capacity building is the employability. It was a second bullet point I mentioned. When you promote non-conventional water resources, you can prepare the ground for job opportunities, or we can create opportunities for something new to come up in the market, like in a water supply and sanitation, urban water management, or rural. It depends on the area of application. And the awareness raising, which is, let's say, equally important, if not more important than all the others, because if you cannot communicate something you have made, then I don't know what else can be done about what you have made. And the awareness raising was targeted on specific and wider audiences. When I say specific, it could be hotels, it could be tourists, it could be students. There are specific audiences, like the farmers, water saving campaigns, non-conventional water resource campaign, which is a broader context, and of course campaigns for tourists that who are the most water consuming individuals if we leave agricultural activities aside. What was the value of the program? First of all, it provided a holistic approach. It described the whole concept and using all the elements of the integrated water resources management. It incorporated multi-stakeholder partnership, like the ones you saw in some previous slides. Of course, build it on existing capacities in order to invest for the future generations. It provided outputs that were tangible, and they have the potential of scaling up. Alexandros had provided some info on non-conventional water resources potential in the previous presentation 2 weeks ago. It contributed to water security and climate adaptation at local level. And of course, if they scale up, they can contribute to national level as well. And of course, engages local community for sustainable future. Why local communities? Because we went down to the level that to identify the lowest level of need of water. Some of the lessons learned during the program, and if you consider that it was a 14-year program, some of the lessons are very important, is that the practices of the past or our heritage points to cost-efficient and sustainable water solutions for the future. What was done before, it can be applied now today as well, but with modern features, if that is necessary, but they show the way forward. Optimizing the existing infrastructure and achieving water efficiency. The optimization of the infrastructure is not something costly. It can be made with small investments, but the economic gains are incredible. They're great. And of course, combining the use of water saving devices or water efficient devices and mindful use of water significantly improves the efficiency of resources. This is something that can be applied in both on domestic level or in market level, like the the hotels and other activities. The awareness raising and the education provides the opportunity for a better future in terms of water use and the application of non-conventional water resources. If the people know, then the people can apply in those practices in their everyday life. And of course, fostering the knowledge sharing and fostering the job creation can become something greater. We can start, for example, a workshop can train technicians. The technicians then can upgrade and scale up all the applications that were made during the program. So what is the way forward? There is a legacy of the applications and the various non-technical activities. We know that all works that will continue to yield benefits for some years, but we must focus on youth and women, and we must focus on innovative applications for the environment and for water security, climate adaptation, and local development. This is something that also Alexis mentioned in his last presentation, although I should have made that presentation, but I had connection issues, that we should focus on many aspects in order to promote the innovative application of non-conventional water resources. And of course, to improve the enabling environment by lifting some of the, if not all, the constraints that prevent or there are some obstacles on the use of such technologies. I know I was very fast, so we have much time for questions, if there's any. No questions. I was not.
If there are no questions for now, we can give the floor to Alexandros. I would also like to thank you, Nikos, for your very interesting presentation. It's really nice to see how we can turn challenges into opportunities, and how we can also use like historic practices to also solve our issues for water challenges like today using modern technology. So it's not about reinventing the wheel, but about improving and building upon what has been done.
Exactly, so, and Malta is one of the greatest examples in this. They started simple, they have gone complex.
And I think thanks to the Alter Aqua, a lot has been done on like restoring underground reservoirs, and we hope that more can be done. So we'll be giving the floor to Alex. Thank you.
Thank you, Gilbert. Thank you, Nico. Actually, the two presentations are linked, so we can address questions at the end, I'm sure. Let me share the screen and please tell me if it's working as it should. Can you see
it?
Full screen?
Yes. Yes.
Perfect. Okay. Excellent. So taking on from where Nikos left, we'll talk about communications for water security, promoting public awareness and emotional connection with water issues, and we'll talk about why we're focusing on emotion. So let's first talk about, why do we need to focus on communications? Why are people's attitudes important? Why do they matter? And well, it really is quite simple, because it's especially in Malta, so personal water consumption is a very big part of total water consumption, especially in Malta. Actually, it's much higher than in the EU. So reducing water consumption at home is always a very important factor. And Nikos also spoke about our behavior as tourists, which is something that we don't often think about. But for example, I was attended a webinar recently where they gave the example that in Zanzibar, where there is water scarcity, so hotels use from 400 liters to 2,000 liters per person per day, which is really astonishing. And it's the problem there is that there's obviously they start depleting the groundwater. The water becomes the salinity enters into the groundwater, and then suddenly a big conflict erupts with local communities pitted against the hotel owners. So it really is a very big issue. Why else is it important to influence people, to make people aware about water issues? Well, we influence policymakers, and whether they decide to take action or not take action on water issues is to a great degree depends on, do my constituents care about this? Do they really understand what the costs of actually taking action on water? And when we speak about water management or water conservation, very often for us, for people at home, we think, it's about turning off the tap. But in reality, and we'll go into this in more detail, it's good to actually broaden from the outset to realize that this is not just about the tap at home. This is about water management, and water conservation has to do with a lot with floods. It has to do with pollution and protecting water bodies. It has to do with climate change, and it has to do with growing our food and many more aspects that when we narrow it down to, take a shorter shower or turn off the tap, I think we lose the big picture, but we'll go more into this. So how can we make people care? Well, people should care because water is everywhere, or because water is the essence of life. And we've heard these cliches, and we know it's true, but they are abstractions and they are cliches. So it's hard to get people excited. At least that's the way I feel. It's hard to get people to get a hold on something with something so abstract. We could say the same thing about oxygen. Oxygen is the essence of life because we only have it on Earth, and how would we live otherwise? But it's hard to imagine people getting very excited about, let's protect oxygen, for example, or air. Of course, it's important. So when we think about communicating to people, we need to think that just because something is important for us doesn't really mean that it's interesting to our audience. It's obvious, but we don't always take this into account. So the point is, if we try to broaden our thinking and think, did people used to care more about water in the past? Were these abstract shoulds and oughts that maybe today don't work so well? Did they work more in the past? So let's think about what kind of connections were perhaps more obvious to people in the past. So a practical connection is that obviously, water was the basis of growing food. It was necessary for drinking, but it wasn't taken for granted. It was necessary for health and sanitation. It would determine whether babies would very often would live or die. So around that practical importance, there was an ethical consideration. So there was a consideration of fairness, of justice, because communities had to divide water in fairness, or they would go in conflict. And how much to use for one use or another. These were extremely important issues that people were immediately involved in. And also there were very strong emotional considerations, because when something is scarce and so precious, it was actually, it had the power of the divine for people. And this is not an exaggeration, because all these are actually water deities. So we know this, but it's interesting to think about it that for people in the past, water was God. It was many gods actually. And it was linked to all sorts of very intense feelings. It had to do a lot with hope and justice, and how the gods will look upon us. Will they give us rain or not? Will we have prosperity to grow food? What will become of us? Will we go to war with a neighboring community or not? All these things were linked to water. But today, because water is so available, at least for developed countries, I think one by one these aspects, these connections, these handles of connection with water are dissolving. So to be a bit humorous, so the gods were killed by none other than the tap. So in the sense that how can you respect and take an ethical stance and form an emotional connection to something that has become so predictable, so plentiful, so cheap? How important can it really be for us? So the challenge for us today, we can't go to the past. We wouldn't want to, because of course it's great that water is much more available and we have water security to a much greater degree than in the past. So, but how can we help our audience form a connection that will help conserve our water resources and prepare us for the future, which is presenting very big challenges? And so let's take an example from, again, think about other areas of where there are other areas of conservation. For example, animal conservation. We have these faces of nature, like the whales or the panda or the rainforests. And when we think, help save the whale or the tiger, then we can connect to that. But it's really much harder to trying to be funny here, but you get my point. It's much harder to think about water as an abstraction. So actually, only yesterday I took part in a training where we were being trained by the GWP, the Global Secretariat, gave us a training on water communications. So I saw a video that really caught my attention, and I'm sharing this with you now. So it's about how to restore that connection, and let's watch.
एक दिन हमारे गांव में किसी ने नहाने का सावर रख दिया। हमारे आधे गांव ने पानी पी लिया और एक शहर वाले का नहाना अभी खत्म ना हुआ।
So I think with this video, it is really, for me, it illustrates the point that imagine if it was a different video where it just showed a shower and saying, you're wasting 450 liters of water every time you shower if you don't turn off the tap. It's true, it's practical, and it's the truth, and it's data that is solid, but it's the concept of water has been reduced to something that is basically the tap. There's no symbolism, there's no emotion, there's no understanding of the broader connections of water. So how can we take this idea that we need to restore the connection of water to, we often say that water flows through, for example, through all the sustainable development goals. So, to end poverty, you need water. To improve sanitation or education, you need water. So we need to take this seriously, I think, and we actually need to show this in our communications and not just say it, not just say that water is so important. So we need to, because it's also the truth, it's not, we're not making it up. So we need to talk about it and tell the stories, how water is related to health, to defining, life and death for babies or for children, how it's related to growing our food, securing our food supply, preserving ecosystems. It's linked to economic growth and development. It's linked to peace. It can determine war or peace in a transboundary setting. It's crucial for securing gender rights, where in Africa it's such a huge issue that the lack of water at schools means that girls miss once a month when they have their period, they miss school, and that only applies for girls and not boys. It's linked to climate change, which is obviously the biggest threat we're facing in the future. It's not, all this is not just negative, it's also linked to innovation. So it's a big challenge that we can actually, how to achieve water security and how to tackle these challenges is a great spur for innovation and creativity. So let's go ahead and look at some examples of how we've tried to actually make this connection evident in our communications. So I think one really good example comes from the Global Water Partnership Network, the global network, where the idea was conceived that, we're influencing water management, we're influencing decision makers, we're achieving results, but we need to make the stories obvious and tangible for people. We need to put people at the center, because as we said before, as I tried to convey also in a funny way, is that, water is an abstraction. If we strip water down from all its connections, then it's hydrogen to oxygen. It's a chemical compound, let's say. So we need to put all these human elements back into water. And this is what the Water Changemaker Award. So basically it was a global call for stories of change on water issues from around the globe. And again, what is a water issue? I mean, like the winner here, the Masungi Georeserve story in the Philippines, it's not just about water, it's about forests, about protecting primary forests, of which only 3% remain in the Philippines. It's a story of social justice, of communities coming together to protect natural resources against illegal mining, against land trafficking, against illegal poaching. Water indeed flows through this whole story, and this is the essence of it, but it's so important to actually see the struggles that are connected with this, the hopes of the people who are coming together to protect their community and the future, and to build so many partnerships around these common goals. So it's about water and so much more. And I think this is one great example of how we can do this. Another example comes from our recent project, the Aqua project that Nikos presented on just now. Which is part of the non-conventional water resources program in the Mediterranean. So very recently, we had an important intervention in Vitoriosa, in Birgu, restoring the rainwater harvesting reservoir under the main square. And let's hear from, again, we made a video on not just the technical aspect of it, which is quite fascinating actually, but what does this reservoir, what does this water mean to people? And let's hear
Malta minn dejjem kienet dbati bin-nuqqas ta' ilma. Meta ġew il-kavallieri fl-1530 bdew jibnu il-Birgu. Dak iż-żmien il-Birgu kien jiġi referut bħala ċittà nuova. Għadda żmien u fl-1722 meta Gran Mastru Antoine de Vilhena beża illi seta' jkun hawn xi ħbit fuq Malta, kien qabad l-enġinier Fortunato Carapecchia biex jagħmel inventarju tal-bjar kollha li kienu jeżistu fil-djar ġewwa l-Birgu, Bormla, Lisa u ġewwa l-belt. Il-Birgu mela f'dawk li huma djar li kienu jissejħu bħala kwartieri kien hemm 823 bir. Total ta' ftit inqas minn 47,000 botta. Illi kull botta huwa kalkulat li hija 420 litru. Bejnietom kollha daw kien hemm ftit iżjed minn 17 miljun litru ta' ilma.
Fid-djar tagħna għandna 4 tibjar u l-4 tibjar qegħdin maqsumin 2 u 2. Ġifieri 2 jagħtu lil xulxin u 2 jagħtu lil xulxin. Ilhom mibnijin mad-dar stess, ġifieri qed nitkellmu madwar 500 sena, u l-ilma huwa importanti bħalma kien dak iż-żmien huwa importanti llum. U għadna nużaw il-bir sal-lum il-bjar qed nużawhom aħna, l-ilma tajjeb għal kollox.
Meta kont żgħir, mill-iktar fil-ġranet tas-sajf, peress li ma kienx konna skola, konna nqataw ħafna ħin għand in-nanna. U niftakar hekk in-nannu għal ħfirlu kien joħodni miegħu, mmorru ntellaw l-ilma mill-bir li kellhom u kien isaqqi l-pjanti nista' ngħid kważi kuljum. Niftakar l-ilma hekk ċar, frisk li kien itella mill-bir u ħaġa li kienet taffaxxinani dejjem. L-ewwel nett meta tħares li l-bir tara dik is-swidija. U konħu gost ingara dik il-naqxej ta' ġebla biex nara nisma' l-ħoss tal-ilma meta il-ġebla taqa' fil-bir.
Dal-bir tiegħi li qed ma' ġenbi hawnhekk għandu l-fuq minn 150 sena. Aħna l-importanti hu li l-ewwel xita nerfawha, nitfawha barra, ma nitfawix fil-bir. Ħalli l-bejt jinħasel u jkun nadif. Meta mbagħad tagħmel it-tieni xita tibda tidħol fil-bir. Hawn ħafna bjar li jintużaw pompi li ħajja ħaġa tajba. Imma importanti li inti tuża l-barmil, tniżlu, terġa' tellaw biex tħaddem l-ilma, għax iktar ma ċaqlaq l-ilma, iktar li bqa' l-ilma sabiħ.
So this is the video that we made to show, I think it speaks for itself. I don't really need to explain what we saw, but the connection to people's not just the history of the city and the history of also the raids against Malta and the siege, but also people's stories with their parents, their grandparents, what used to be so important to people and so precious. I think it's quite important. Another example comes from, and this is where it really links with what Nikos presented about the pilot applications and the model solutions, is that, for example, this application that we did a few years ago, again through the Aqua project, combining a grey water recycling system with a green roof application at MCAST. So here, for the people who witnessed this, not just, the intervention itself saved water, it's really important, but the people who witnessed this actually understand, and the communications around it, understand that water is not just an imperative, we should save water and that's it, or it's a risk. It's also a driver for innovation. It's a creative challenge. It's a growth opportunity. And that's something that's really worth stressing and highlighting. And we're moving towards the end, but I really liked what Sandra Postel, who is the Stockholm Water Prize laureate for 2021, very simply says, and she has a lot of experience in talking to policymakers and to people and all kinds of groups and stakeholders. And, she says that we need to speak to head and heart together. Because data is not enough to force action. It's that simple. And data can be, how much liter of water we're wasting at home, or it can be data speaking to policymaker, but we need both. And another example, a simple example, comes from a Horizon project that we're running, and it's on the water, energy, food ecosystems nexus, which is a very popular and an important concept in bridging the uses of water across energy, agriculture. But again, it's important. So what we're trying to do here is important to highlight the human dimension. So even to remember that even behind very complex science and forecasts, and this project is very, modeling all the future scenarios of what will happen when you use so much water to produce energy and so much water to irrigate, etc. But we must remember that humans are at the end, it's about people. It's about people's futures. It's about communities. It's not about abstract data. And we're almost at the end. This is something that I really like personally and enjoy. It's the theory of Eric Berne, who's a psychologist and speaks in very simple terms. So saying that within each of us, we have a parent, an adult, and a child, and it's different parts of our personality, and they understand different languages. So let's say that the adult understands data more, but that's not all, because the parent cares about ethics, you know, about what we should do, what should the community do. And the child is driven more by emotion, by fun, by surprises, and we have all of this within us. So can we target communication to all three of these parts of our personalities and not just focus on one? And I was thinking that, you know, this popular slogan that we have, save water, which we've often used, perhaps it's a bit too abstract or too narrow. And we should think about things like, you know, to the adult, we should explain, you know, we should value water and present the data behind that. To the parent part of our personality, we should speak about respecting water. And this is, for example, the history of Malta with the knights. You know, it's about respecting all this heritage. We don't want to lose that or destroy that. And the child really wants to connect water. It wants to have fun, to creative opportunities, to discover water. And I think if we can combine all these elements, then we can really help people to restore this lost connection without going back to a past that was much tougher for us. But unless we restore this connection, then the future may also be tougher for us. So we're at a good point where we need to restore this connection and help people take action. And that's all. And I'm ending with our, it was St. Valentine's Day a few days ago. So with Maria Livanu, my colleague, this is what we came up for in order to appeal to the child part of our personality for the day. Thank you very much. I'll stop my screen share and we have time for questions or comments, or if people are still awake.
Thank you so much, Alex, for that very, very interesting presentation. I always love this topic when you get human connection with the environment. I mean, at the end of the day, we are surrounded with water, trees, and all. So it's very, what I really liked at the beginning was how you said that just because it's important, it doesn't mean that people care. So it's really nice to try and instill that human connection in such topics, to try and create a sense of urgency as well with these issues. So I know that we received one comment also on the presentation from Anna, who also said that the presentation was very interesting and that she hopes that non-conventional resources also end up being more promoted. But I'm not sure if we have any other comments or questions. Just in case, you can also send us an email if you have any other questions. The webinar will also be available online. Should you wish to rewatch it, we can send you the Zoom link. Thank you for attending today, and thank you, Alex and Nikos, once again for presenting. It was a real pleasure, and thank you all for attending.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.